Hello and what's up? So I had the great pleasure of joining Christine McCluskey, who organized this trip with some of the McCluskey clan. Her brother Matt and sister-in-law Kathy are all in this truck. But also included is Larry Trachtenberg, Charlie Roberto, Steve Rappaport, and Donna Lee Ubertali were all with us. And we went down to Guatemala and took a variety of, planes, trucks, a boat, we didn't quite get any donkey carts, but we were riding around on the back of a pickup truck and none of us fell off, though. We kind of tried to push Larry off once, but he came back. And here's a little map of the area where we birded. We started in the center of and met in Guatemala City, but we covered a lot of ground. We went into the highlands over by the Mexican border over on the west. We were in the lowlands, in the desert. We were in the jungle. We were in a lake. We just covered the country. And I need to shout out to our guide, Anna, who was just one of the best guides I've ever had. And I've had some good guides in my life. But this woman, besides being an excellent birder, she also had connections. So she just knew where the birds were. And she knew local farmers and families who would host us for breakfast or lunch. So we were just always taken care of really well and welcomed everywhere we went. So we arrived and all got together and then headed out in this small puddle jumper of a plane. It had enough room for the 9 of us, plus a pilot and co-pilot, though Christine was offering to fly it if the pilot hadn't shown up. But we flew halfway across the country and still had to drive another 5 or 6 hours and climb another 5 or 6 thousand feet to get to our ultimate destination in Sibonal, which is near the Tacana volcano, which you can see in the distance in the shot I took the next morning. And we crossed over some passes that were well over 11,000 feet. I have my little GPS, checking for nearby geocaches, I guess, but also noting how high we were. And the first bird I got really excited about on day one was this lovely pink-headed warbler. And fortunately, we had Steve Rappaport along on the trip who got a lot of lovely pictures. And we saw many other warblers, including a number of the ones we see up here. We were in Guatemala in February and they hadn't quite started making their way back north yet. But our main reason for going into the highlands was to see this horned guan, the endemic species, which is only up high. And we took what felt like quite a trek, but I think it was day 2 and we were at over 9,000 feet and just all feeling the altitude. But we had, Charlie there to, occasionally give us a boost, and we had great guides. And I think we were on someone's farm, and I think the owner of the property actually spotted the bird finally and alerted us to where it was. And then after that, we got to have lunch in the family's home and were served a wonderful meal as we all celebrated, surviving the day and finding the bird we were looking for. Some other birds up in the highlands included this gray silky flycatcher. It was actually the first new bird for me on this trip. I saw one in Guatemala City, and I think I saw one on every single day of the trip subsequently. And there were also a lot of rufous-collared robins. There were a lot of different types of hummingbirds. I think this might have been the only hummingbird I actually got a picture of because hummingbirds are always flitting around. But then, of course, beautiful, beautiful birds. And again, if a caption says SR in parentheses, I'm crediting Steve Rappaport for these shots. This was another tiny little town in the Highlands called Union Reforma. And we got on the bus and were up at early morning, several hours, and had breakfast at someone's house. And then we're out birding, saw lots of lovely birds, and then again back at the house for lunch. And here are a couple of my favorites: the northern emerald toucanet and the blue-throated motmot, which I think Steve managed to get on this bird and take its picture before I could even find it. But I did manage to get a picture of this mountain trogon, also at Union Reforma. And the same day we met at some other spot in the evening for a night a night trip, and we heard and then saw a pair of these fulvous owls. And this photo was taken by Christine McCluskey. And we also heard some Mexican whippoorwills. And then the pair of owls seemed to follow us all around the park calling. So we didn't manage to see many other species after they started their duet. We came down from the highlands and stayed at Los Torrales Nature Reserve, which has a lot of cabins. And until a couple of days before our arrival, they had this really large kapok tree on the grounds, and it fell, landing on what would have been Larry's cabin, I believe. My cabin is the one next to the tree. It was still left standing, just barely. But other than the tree damage, everything at the property was still in working order. There's Steve Rappaport. He seems to have made a friend with this crested guan. And we took a lot of trips around the grounds. We had early morning outings, late evening outings, midday outings, lazy birder, just sit and see what comes to the feeders, like this Altamira oriole. I just sat one afternoon for a couple hours by these bananas and watched what would come and go. A bird I found absolutely fascinating was this Lessons motmot. Just take a look at that tail. I don't know, it looks like it's just barely holding on there with a couple of tiny little filaments. And then I also became fascinated with this collared aracari, which was feeding high up on this tree. It was pulling berries and tossing them up and then swallowing them with that great big bill. And here are a couple of more interesting birds: the black-headed saltator and the white-bellied chachalaca. I feel like we should be dancing, cha-cha, I don't know. Both beautiful to look at and fun to say. There were some other mammals on the trip, including this agouti, and I don't know, those two guys. Near Los Torrales, we moved to another location by Lake Atitlan. And Lake Atitlan is a mountain lake surrounded by 3 volcanoes. I was told that the setting was the setting of the children's book, The Little Prince, was based on the scenery around this lake. It was really beautiful. I enjoyed some of the vegetation. I don't know the names of any of the plants, but I really like these red balls in this bush with the wren. And here's another hummingbird, the slender sheartail, which we went out and found near the lake. And not too far from here, we went on another quest to find the resplendent quetzal. And we did some hiking along this really narrow ledge with these giant leaves and lots of interesting vegetation, steep drop-offs. And the best look we got at the bird was if we looked at the money. the bills are called quetzals, and every bill has a picture of the bird on it. Otherwise, we heard the bird, or the guide heard the bird, and some people saw the bird fly away, but sometimes that happens while birding. We did have much better luck later in the day when we drove around. This was the day we were driving around in that truck I showed you in the first slide. And we stopped at a place. They were picking, I believe they were picking coffee, and people were carrying huge bags of the picked crop along a trail. And we were getting in their way while we were looking for birds and photographing butterflies. And Charlie can tell you more about butterflies. I know nothing about them other than this one was really pretty, and it looks like it has the number 88 on its side. And then this day we headed off to a farm in the desert area looking for roadrunners. And I think this picture was taken early in the morning. We're all happy and smiling, and getting ready to start out on the day. And this farm had a lot of outbuildings they were manufacturing fireworks, but not to worry. There were these helpful, safety conscious signs of what we should do in case of fire. And we had our fireman Charlie with us, so we felt really safe. And there were some good birds in the area. I think, again, this was really hot, sunny country. Most of my pictures turned out to be of birds that were in the shade. Again, another fantastic tail on this russet-crowned motmot. And I really love the yellow grosbeak and that really big honking bill it has. And then Steve got a nice picture of a groove-billed Annie, which I don't know if you can tell. It has really striking grooves in its bill. And I'm going to save the best part of the trip for last here. Only Larry and I did an extension to the World Heritage City of Tikal, which is an ancient Mayan ruin in the middle of the jungle. We arrived late one afternoon, and we were staying in the Jungle Lodge, which is on the grounds of the property. And I headed off by myself into the jungle. And about 2 hours went by without my seeing another person. I was just all alone, wandering around the ruins. And I did see a lot of monkeys, and most of them stayed high up in the trees, like this spider monkey here. They would look down at me, wondering, what am I doing? And there were also a lot of ocellated turkeys. These are very colorful birds. They were running around among the ruins, and a lot of other birds. And if you only have a couple of days to go to Guatemala and visit only one place, this is where you should go. Besides fantastic ruins in the jungle, hardly any people, there are just a lot of birds. And here's just a few of them. Larry and I hired a guide, and we had a half-day tour. We got 73 species in that time. One of them was this keel-billed toucan. And the first time I ever saw one of these birds in Panama, I misheard what the guide called it. I thought it was a Kill Bill toucan. I think that movie had just come out, but I learned it was the keel-billed. And one of my absolute favorites was this boat-billed heron. And Larry and I went and found this bird and a lot of other birds at this little sort of pond not too far from our lodging. When our guide left us, he gave us directions to go down to some path, turn right. When you see the sign that says, "Danger, crocodiles do not enter," we were to go that way. And yes, there was a crocodile, and I felt safe. I just had to outrun Larry, not the crocodile. And here's just a few more birds and a howler monkey. The howler monkeys woke woke up early morning and were howling, and I thought it was cool. And there were a couple of other interesting birds, the Montezuma or pendula, which had also very cool looking hanging nests that looked like giant Christmas ornaments. And there were a number of different kinds of woodpeckers. I took a picture of the pale billed. I was thinking maybe I'd, submit it as an ivory billed somewhere. And this is, we'll save the absolute last, best for last, the orange-breasted falcon, the second rarest falcon in the world. We saw not one, but two of them. They're nesting in one of the taller ruins and just hanging out, watching the tourists. And just in case you were curious, the rarest falcon in the world is the Mauritius kestrel. And I guess we'll save that for some future trip.